So we have a complete contempt for anything that can be proved. Anything that could be supported objectively, we had to dismiss all of that. Now, how can someone make a comment like that and earnestly believe that his position is truthful and accurate? What about, speaking of truthful, when on our last show, when Truthful Christian was on here and he was answering all these questions with no comment? What state is he in? Does he really believe that his position is the true one if he has to come up with answers like this?
Perpetual confusion is the expression that comes to my mind, but concordance. Have you lost concordance?
I'm here.
Yeah.
No, I'm here. Sorry. I don't think I'm strongly against the little lies. I don't know that you can live life brutally honest. I don't know if you've seen the movie, what the heck's his name? The guy who did the original Office. Come on, DPR.
Ricky Gervais?
Ricky Gervais, yeah, the man who invented lying, basically.
Yes.
He lived in a world where everyone, and I was thinking about this morning, not only was not able to lie, but they didn't hold information back either. So if someone was ugly, they were quite brutally honest about them being ugly. I don't think that society would ever have really come to the point it was at. I don't think you can have treaties, for example, between countries without a little bit of lying. You know, you're so handsome, you're so wonderful. But I think what we're talking about when we say that lies are usually harmful or destructive are really the big lies. They don't seem big at the time. But things like, don't worry about what happens to you in this world, because in the next world it's going to be beautiful, and the roads are going to be paved with gold, and we'll all be happy forever, takes away from someone one of the most important things, and that's the desire to struggle, the desire to make things in this world right. And I think that makes it one of the great lies, one of the big ones. So if it were a little thing of, for children, Santa Claus, my kids believe in Santa Claus at this point, although I'm pretty sure my daughter's figured it out. But those little lies create a little mystery, they create a little magic, but when you get to the big lies about how do you live your life, how do you spend your time, where does your money go, then you're doing real harm. And so I don't know that there's a hard line between them, but just because you can't draw a hard line doesn't mean that the separation doesn't exist between the little lies and the big lies.
The only time I see justification in, as you put it, the little lies,
Can you mute your mic?
when you're,
That's me, I'm sorry.
yeah, is when we're talking about self-preservation. Now, I can understand when you have situations of détente, whether it's with other nations or with your boss or something. You may want to be careful about what you say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're supported in telling a lie even then. I would say only when you're under fire and need to escape and you don't have an option. I can see it as a method of self-preservation. But if we're talking about, we have to remember that religion screams that everything that they say is the truth. And it's all, truth with a capital T, and it's shouted as loudly as it can be, and there's no truth in it.
You upset your birds, Aaron.
Yes. Aaron, what about telling children that Father Christmas exists?
Oh, I wish you hadn't brought that up. What a painful memory that is. I was 8 years old and I maintained my belief in God. I know my belief in Santa Claus, well, what's the difference? But my belief in Santa Claus was maintained only because of my faith in my dad. And I remember getting into an argument with my stepbrother on that point, where my stepbrother was a year younger than me, was making fun of me for still believing in Santa Claus. We're driving in the car with my dad. My little stepbrother's making fun of me for that, and I remember saying, I believe in Santa Claus because my daddy said there's a Santa Claus, and my daddy would never lie to me, would you, Dad? Guess what his answer was?
Yep.
Yep.
Going back to the corner, it sounded from what you said that when you said that you didn't require the comfort blanket anymore, that you were at one stage religious, but you've now left that behind you. Would that be right?
Not really. No. I was raised in England in a sort of cultural Anglican state, where it's just being baptized is just something you do, and going to church every Sunday, it's where you meet people. But I was certainly never indoctrinated. Let's just say I had fuzzy thoughts during my teenage years. But it was really like, after I stumbled across all the YouTube video, I think it was one of Thunderfoot's actually, around 2008, where I just began absorbing all this information, and that's really, really hardened my stance on it. But it just really got me thinking about, when is the truth, a good thing, and when might it not be a bad thing? And I in particular enjoyed listening to Concordance say whether it's a big lie or a small lie. I think I would tend to agree on that. What I would like to ask again, or in more detail perhaps, if I'm allowed to.
Do go ahead.
Would you accept perhaps that there are some people, I think the typical example is... The dog? Okay.
Alright.
No worries.
I got my mute mic.
Is that, whose dog is that?
Of course, they're mine.
You got a menagerie or a zoo. Sorry, Hans, do go on.
No problem. It's just whether, perhaps for some people, I was looking on the internet today, one guy, an Australian guy called Nick Vujicic, I think he's called, maybe you've heard of him. It's a guy with no arms and no legs, and he goes around on tours to schools telling people how he was able to overcome the fact that he has no limbs. And I would doubt whether I'd be able to find hope if I were in that situation. Would it, for those people, perhaps, even if it is a big lie, be a good thing to have religion as a comfort blanket, like it is for this guy that I've mentioned?
That's a good point. Does anyone want to take that? You've got to unmute your microphone, Aaron. I can see your lips move, but I can't hear you.
Somebody sent me a report about people in concentration camps and how they have sustained themselves by finding a purpose to their lives, and that even if they didn't believe that purpose was legitimately real, it was still something that drove them on, and so you needed to find a purpose to make your life meaningful to you, and I can understand that. But at the same time, there are so many religious leaders that I can point to who are not giving these people a purpose to their lives, but are only poisoning the minds of their congregations entirely.
Concordance?
Something atheists are always averse to talking about, and that's spirituality, and the independent spirituality, completely separate from any kind of religious context. Your place in the universe and how it makes you feel. I think the most touching videos I've seen by some of my favorite YouTubers are about how they see themselves in the grand scheme of the cosmos, as a humanity, as a species. So when you say, religion is a particular comfort for them, I don't think it's the only comfort. I think you could argue, I don't think it's 100% given, that religion is a very poor shade of what kind of comfort we get from reality. And I would much rather people deal with the world as it is than deal with the world as they would like it to be. But that's for every person to decide. I think what I focus much more on is people for whom self-delusion becomes a problem in their lives, right? Where religion is a pathology. It's something that's keeping them from becoming what they truly want for themselves. And I think there are millions of people across my country who are living these lives frustrated and not quite understanding why they're frustrated.
I think I probably speak for all of us when I say our view is that we've got no problem with anyone's individual personal beliefs, even if they are religious. Where we have a problem is when those views start impacting on other people by way of affecting the education or affecting other people's lives by reason of a tyrannical pastor or reverend or whatever. I suspect, as I say, I'm speak for everyone when I say that, but just dealing with one of the comfort things that may exist and may cause people to believe in a God, and that's an eternal afterlife. From my point of view, I was talking about this a couple of days ago, an eternal afterlife would be absolute hell. Would anyone agree with that? Aaron's busy. Concordance, do you want to, or Hans, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Well, I suppose on some level, people who say they want there to be an afterlife don't really think about what it means. I was watching a video by Phil Hellenes, I think it was 1 billion years in heaven. He just really, gets you thinking about, what it actually means to just go on and on and on. And I would say on some level it's not really thinking about what it entails. I think it's about wishful thinking without even thinking about what the consequences are. But that's just my personal thoughts on the matter.
I've heard an illustration that if you had a gigantic mountain bigger than the earth and it's made entirely of bronze or iron or steel, and every million years, a single bird flies by and brushes against the mountain with one feather of one wing. By the time the mountain is worn down, you'll still be singing your song. It's impossible for us to conceive of what an infinity or what that really means, what eternal really means. And it's a horrible prospect. Doing anything for eternity is a horrible idea. But realistically, that's not how people perceive it. They're just afraid of death. They just want an answer that they're not going to die.
Yeah, Aaron, did you want to comment on this?
I can't imagine being so afraid of death.
Microphone concordance.
Yeah, I can't imagine being so afraid of death that I would endure any of the things that any of these religions promise me. I mean, the Abrahamic religions anyway. I can't. There's no sense in the concept of hell. It's just threatening a fate worse than death for anybody that doesn't believe what you're selling without reason. But the promise that you're offering also doesn't get it. I mean, with the Christian thing, when they talk about how they're never going to die, well, they are going to die, and then after they die, they're going to continue on as if there's a purpose in that. But and they don't get to avoid that. Being Christian doesn't get you to avoid writhing on the ground with clutching your chest, trying to gasp for air, and that's the part I have a problem with. Death isn't the big deal. It's it's that moments of anguish as you're passing into that mode. That's what I would kind of like to avoid, and no religion offers that.
Okay, on that note, I'm going to end the call, but thank you for your call, Hans, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. The reason I'm doing so is because we now have 3 people lined up, so for the moment hold back on sending any more messages, and we'll go straight on to the next caller.